Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Chasing Edges podcast. I'm your host, Brian Peters. Got an absolute dog on today, Justin Kavanaugh, Coach Cav. He's an Olympic sprint coach and a sports performance coach. He also dabbles in coaching the CEOs and the high performers of the world. But incredible conversation. We start off talking about his book. He's also a best-selling author of the book Man Up. So we get quickly into self-awareness. We get quickly into mental skills and how to establish self-confidence, awareness, how to develop drive, motivation, and purpose. He has acronyms that he uses to portray these and teach them to his clients and his athletes, which I think is an incredible format, tangibilizing the skills and creating systems to support that. And then we go down all the rabbit holes of speed. We start talking about weight room, why stretching's been vilified, but he does it with his Olympic athletes, all those things. And then we get into the Olympic mindset, like what happens between the ears, like when they step up to the line, do they get anxiety or adrenaline, and how to coach that and how to understand that and how to show up as a coach intentionally. So we talk a lot about intention and self-awareness, but there's a lot of nuggets in here on speed and the perspective you should take when addressing and assessing not only yourself and your athletes, but really how to get faster. And that's coming from one of the guys that coaches some of the fastest humans on the planet, if not the fastest human on the planet. So hopefully you enjoy. Hey everybody, quick shout out to the Breath Belt. Excited to announce that we're partnering with the Breath Belt here on Chasing Edges. Phenomenal tool. If you're watching the video, I'm holding it up. Looks like a back support device, but it's a great tool to train diaphragmatic strength. Obviously, being a breath coach, I'm a massive fan of it. It gives you the ability to open up the abs, the psoas, activate the QL, get people breathing into their sides and back, which is phenomenal for them. It's very hard to be a 360 breather. It's endorsed by some of the biggest dogs in the industry, RPR System, Sorinex, Kabuki Strength, Rogue Fitness, all the above. You can find them at the Breath Belt on Instagram. You'll see Jesse's profile there, and then thebreathbelt.com. And the coolest thing here is they have given us a massive code for you guys. The code is EDGES20, giving you a 20% off discount to the Breath Belt, and it's all caps, EDGES20, EDGES20. Check them out. But I'm a big believer in this. Obviously, if you've followed the podcast at all, I'm a believer in activation from the inside out. I think that starts with breathing. Obviously, I definitely think that starts with the psoas. You've heard me say before, if I could do one thing before I trained, it'd be trigger pointing my psoas. And if you use this tool, you'll find out why. Also, along with trigger pointing the psoas in general. But hopefully you enjoy. Coach Cav, surprise guest for the evening. How we doing?
I'm doing fantastic. You?
Good, man. I'm pumped to talk to you.
Talk to me. We've been talking for 2 hours. Yeah, and you said we should probably record this.
Yeah, I'm excited about the recording and the sharing of information and all those kind of things. But we were just having a conversation really quick. Started talking about your book, Man Up. But the creation of the book has a cool little story behind it, how it escalated. You want to go into that real quick?
Yeah, it does. So it's cool. It's like, you get into like life a little bit, and you're like, people that are like, that have helped you a lot, right? You get from, there's an idea that you always want to kind of, be in the room with people that you look up to. But then there's this idea of like, you want to stand on the shoulders of giants, like Tony Robbins style. So I remember like I'd been at Swiss a bunch, talked to, been brought in as a guest in some capacities at panels, and Ken said, you'll never speak at Swiss unless you publish your book. You have too much knowledge and too much experience, more so much than the education. You have too many things that you've actually kind of like, cut your cloth on that you need to really share with the world. And I'm like, yeah. And I was really self-conscious about writing and or just kind of putting my stuff out there. And the reason for that was, it's like almost like final, right? It's like that's a way someone could judge you. Whereas like in sport, it's like you have a next rep, you have another opportunity. So I was a little hesitant, and then Dr. Serrano basically said every single day, it was like, get your shit together, don't embarrass me, get it out. I put my name on the line, and you're like, oh crap, that's hard. When someone that's literally like saved your life, been there for you, helped you in so many ways, is basically saying, you're letting me down because I want to help you. That's a challenge, right? And here I am writing a book about basically manning up, which the whole concept of the book, I train thousands of high school kids, right? And a lot of times, a lot of the work I do, the training is easy, right? The physical part, that's super, super easy. And it's also like just the discipline of showing up. If you're around good guides, good coaches, people, systems, process, you're gonna get the results. But often a lot of the work I do is actually this kind of self-awareness part with an athlete, and it's really disconnected with parents, because parents start to live vicariously through the kid. They think that they're trying to help them, but they start to pull them away, and kids tend to rebel, and then parents are like, hey, I'm more wise than you, so I'm trying to help you. So long story short, what ends up happening is my work came from being a performance coach, someone who's trying to inspire and push them forward and say, let's do this, to, hey, there's this huge wall right now between you and your parent that's hindering you from getting you where you want to be. So if I sat down with a kid and I had a come to Jesus meeting, and I basically said, hey, you need to man up. This is the goals that you had. That's what we created. And that's what this book is. It's an hour and a half, basically, of me sitting down with every athlete over the course of 20 plus years, having a come to Jesus meeting with them. You say that you want this, right? Your ambitions are here, your actions are here. And that gap is a huge problem. And when your actions and your ambitions are not aligned, then we got to have a level of a reality check. And that's a key, that's like the number one factor for success for athletes, in my opinion, is self-awareness. And oftentimes, your self-awareness is going to be skewed based upon your bias, right?
Yeah, so no doubt.
Exactly. So I basically created a book, and the book was like grow some balls, right? Balance, accountability, lust, love, and sacrifice. The 5 areas of an athlete's life that they need to have dialed in to hit their goals. And balance, really, really simple, is everyone thinks you need to be balanced in your life in order to be able to hit, like your goals and your lifestyle. But the reality is successful people are completely out of balance. So the balance is not necessarily 50-50, because I don't think you'll be successful in anything in life if you're dividing, your time.
Work, rest, 50-50, whatever.
Exactly.
It ends up
being, yeah. What balance to me is, it's in alignment with your priorities. It's strategic priorities, meaning, I wasn't much of someone who was a fan of school, but I was required to do it so I could go play sports.
Task completion.
Yeah, so my balance for me was doing just enough so that I could get to the thing that I really care about.
So it's like, what is it, minimal effective dose? Like,
that's it.
Yeah. There's education. The other 97% of me is going to go to sport training.
Yeah, and then what happens is when I'm in the area of my highest priority, I am all in. I'm focused. I'm definitely more diligent. Like anybody, there's some freaks out there that are so like 100% in every area of their life. But listen, you have me to like write an email to somebody. I promise you, you're not going to get the best version of me. You're going to get the pissed off, stressed out, procrastinator, lazy as shit type of guy that just doesn't want to do this one piece of part of my life, but it's a requirement. So you're not going to get this like focused, intent-driven person that's passionate about writing a stupid email.
Yeah, you're not going to get a poetic 5-paragraph
essay. Like, it's just not going to happen,
yeah.
Right? It's going to be basically my exposure of my inadequacies in my education. So for me, I'm lazy in the area that I'm not that great, but when I'm in the area that is what my passion, my focus is, I'm all in. And I stay in. I literally get super, super like tunnel vision. I said, nothing's going to stop me. And this level of resiliency I have in areas that I'm interested in is super strong. So it's the balance between that, right? A is for accountability. It's like at the end of the day, you have to be accountable to both your goals. And as much as you want to say, hey, well, I had an intention to get better, intent matters. It's one of the most important things in life. But you're not judged off your intent. You're judged off your actions, right? So that's A. So L was lust. Like, look, there's got to be something that you lust after. When you first start training, you see that girl next to you, you're going to motivate, you're going to push a little bit harder. I don't care what anyone says.
There needs to be carrots, yeah.
Hey, man, listen. Anyone tells you that they're not motivated by looking or feeling and seeing, having someone feel a different way. Like, I'm not motivated by really looking good, to be honest with you. I'm motivated by performing well, right? I don't have any body image issues. I sit here at like 255. I promise you, I'm not really self-conscious about the way I look. I'll take my shirt off if it makes you feel better. That doesn't really get me excited. If I sucked on the field, it would destroy me, right? If I got my ass whooped, right? I remember, probably a few years ago, I got a call from a friend of mine. He said, hey, we had a bunch of fighters drop out. Would you do this kind of like exhibition grappling match on like a pro fight card? I'm like, sure, why not? Like, I haven't trained in years. He's like, how much you weigh? I'm like, I don't know, I'm like 247. Do I have to cut weight? He's like, no, it's exhibition. Well, the guy's over there training to be a professional fighter. We'll just give him a show. You don't roll off the street with a guy that's been doing a camp and just expect and here I am thinking, I'm like, oh, I used to be that guy, So I could go back in there and do it. Tanya found out, my wife found out that I was doing it, and she goes, listen, tomorrow you better be moving. You better be working. So if you can't move, you better figure out a way to get your job done. And I got the shit kicked out of me, but it was a wake-up call, right? But you had to have like that lust. So like that was a hard thing for me. So what did I do? Get my butt back in the gym. And it was nice to get back on the mats from getting your ass kicked because you have a reality check.
Yeah.
But everybody needs that lust, that drive, that passion, something that gets you going. And then love is like your deep rooted purpose, right? So when you work with like higher level athletes, which is where I am now in my life and in career, it's executives and elite athletes. You have what I call is like your first mountain of success. So for instance, you had an incredible pro career. Like a lot of people, you're a 1%er, right? No matter what you say, you might feel a certain way about your career, but you stack that up against maybe your own dream, and that's the only time it's ever in question.
Yeah.
But it's not in question to the world.
Yeah.
It's only in question to like, I wanted to be Michael Jordan of the world in my position in my sport.
Yeah, you want to be the best, but like my systems didn't support that. Like obviously, or else I would have gotten there. You know, to some extent.
But listen, like, there's nothing that you have to feel bad about other than like, hey, when you start competing against where other people are, that's when it becomes a problem. Like you got to know who you are.
Yeah.
Right. But the hell of a pro career. Like at the end of the day, you're a 1% guy.
Yeah, and I think comparison's like a healthy thing as well too. Like obviously you can compare to like create a hierarchy. You can compare to know that there's a gap between where you are and they are, so you can start putting a plan together.
Yeah, some people are born in first base. Some people are born in second, right?
Yeah.
And and I work with athletes. We get into the sprint game a little bit, and some of my athletes in the islands, I put my hands on them and I go, man, that body was born on third base. All you got to do is run. Yeah. You're fast as shit because you're a freak.
Just know where you're going.
Yeah, you're literally. And some of them, like I don't even. Some
turn
guys
left.
I can't. No, some of those guys aren't even 200-meter runners. They can't turn left. I ain't that smart. They just need to run in a straight line. They have two jobs, right? Hold a position and go when the freaking gun goes off. And that's it. But they're freaks. So those guys are born in different positions, right? For a non-freak, like genetically, and doesn't maybe have the support system, they're going to have a little work to, get to that level. But that first kind of mountain is that kind of drive, that success of what I thought I wanted. And then when you reach that, what ends up happening is there's a whole bunch of people that kind of try to hitch their trailer to you.
Yeah, no doubt.
Right? And it's like once you have that success and you're kind of like retiring or you're moving on to this like next part of your career and life, you're at this mountain and you're looking to this next mountain. You're maybe looking at your Mount Everest, right? You're past that first hill. But you don't see that. You look down and you go, oh shit, there's a valley of despair right there. But everybody that hasn't reached that mountain is at the front of the first hill and they're looking up at you and they're like, what's the big deal? If you want that, go get it. It's no big deal. But you're looking at like, dude, this is hard. And this is where like at the pro level, they don't do a really good job with transitions. They don't do a really good job with like setting them up for that next thing.
Yeah, no
and
doubt.
It's because you're looking down at this valley and go, oh man, I'm going to be in a tough position. So that second mountain is what I would consider your telos, man's, higher purpose. And that's like the deep rooted love of what you want for your life.
That's interesting because like obviously I've gone through it a little bit myself, but then also with a bunch of teammates, even like massive names in football and that kind of thing. And
we don't talk about it publicly, but behind closed doors, those conversations, we know what they're like.
Yeah.
And how much does it affect you when you get either married, when you get injured, when you get, you have a baby? How much does it affect you when you get bounced around to team and you just don't get that same love? It changes a lot.
Yeah, well, everything changes. And so like I always, I have a bunch of bits here because I've had this conversation so many times. Sure. Like I either tell guys, you got to learn how to be an infant again. Like you have to learn how to be curious. Your relationship is going to change with your parents. Like you have to learn how to be a son again. You got to learn how to be a husband again, because football, it gives you structure. It gives you camaraderie. It gives you literally your entire life and obviously your income and all those things at the time. So like you have to like restart your brain, and nobody wants to go from the top of the mountain to the valley.
Exactly.
Not a soul. And like that's why half the people, I think, if not more people in the world, hate their job or do something they don't love, is because they already got halfway up the mountain. They don't want to go back down.
Yeah.
And I think it's a massive problem.
And I think that when you get into positions of success in sport, you should kind of like parlay those experiences so that you don't have to start from scratch in your next transition. And people say, well, maybe that's not fair, but like a true celebrity, right? Like you get to a certain point, you're at a status, you should be leveraging that for other things. It shouldn't be like, I'm only good in this one area. You got to learn to leverage that, and accelerate your growth in those next steps, because maybe they're not the same, lessons when it comes to the technical component, but the practical part of it, it's still the same decisions, and it's just a matter of like using it to your advantage. You look at it in, you got like, again, balance, accountability, lust, love. The last one is sacrifice, right? Some of the sacrifices that you and I had, and a lot of the, people that that have had incredible careers way beyond which I did athletically, they matured so quickly when they're younger because they were forced into a very adult world You're a football player, you're very, very mature early on because you're put into an environment that's like lights, camera, and there's a mic on you. Everything that you do is going to be under a microscope.
Yeah, or on camera, and you have to explain every step.
Oh, yeah, right? And it's worse even nowadays with the kids because of how easy accessible media is and how much everyone's always watching, and everything is always being videotaped and been passed around so quickly, right? We get news thrown at us faster than we could absorb it. So we mature so fast in the sport, but in the development of you as a man, right? The development of you as a man is actually very hindered. Because if you think about it, like you get put into such a clear structure that if you don't do the structure, you won't even make it, let alone if you're good enough or not. You're required to be in the structure. It's very similar to men in the military, right? It's like they're men in their life and they're strong, but without that, you take them out of that experience and then they're a wreck. That's why you see so many of them go into becoming alcoholics and diving into different things, or having kids with like many, many different women. And it's not like, oh man, there's an addiction or fall off. It's that they need that structure. So they start looking for something.
Yeah. And right? And it becomes an identity issue or massively like simplify it. It's a self-awareness issue. And so like when you start playing with the identity of it, because I try and like simplify it, and it's like, okay, why do we get so obviously we get attention for being a football player, we get attention for being a special forces guy, whatever it ends up being. But like the title is not the identity. Like what makes you an NFL football player, like all these capabilities, fast-paced decision-making, physical structure, output, whatever it ends up being. But like that's your capability. And just because you're not on a team or in a structure doesn't take away your capability. So I try and simplify it as quick as like getting guys like, you are your capability. That's it. So like you should never stop developing your capability. And like if you don't have the opportunity to play in the NFL anymore, you still have all these capabilities that you can apply and problem solve and figure out what potential next mountain they can be applied to.
And then getting into like people's capabilities and like their growth, I think what's interesting too is like most men, most high performers, and most people in general, they have this like deep-rooted desire to progress, to learn, right? So if you're not learning, right, you spin a little bit. And that's a tough area to be in. And what happens is like you get to certain parts of your career and like what's left in the tank. I might have the ability, but am I being challenged? And the nature of football is that they're like next man up. It's so easy for like next guy up that you have to constantly evolve your game, because a 28-year-old is not a 23-year-old when it comes to them coming downhill.
Yeah.
They are slower. So how are you faster? Your decision making is probably 5 times better than the guy that's 23, 24. Yeah. And that's what makes you look better on film. But if you had those guys that are 28 run a combine again, they wouldn't even get drafted again. And these are first round guys. So how does that happen? It happens because they're maturing in so many other areas. And it's just interesting.
Yeah, that's a great. Well, I agree on like the high performer world. Like I see, like I think the competitiveness like drives a massive level of curiosity and then that's why it's called chasing edges. Like that's what I was doing in my own head. I was trying to find every edge to stack up, law of aggregation of marginal gains, whatever you want to call it, just to get a little bit better everywhere. And the elite players I played with in the NFL, like the separators were, one, they were hyper competitive. Like they didn't have a walkthrough tempo. Like if they're taking a rep on the football field, they're working on their get off, they're getting off, they're communicating high. Like everything's like, there's no walkthrough.
That's in the pursuit of excellence.
Yeah.
If you're a high performer, there's everything that you do. Everyone's like saying, hey, the way you do anything is the way you do everything. I don't agree with that, because like I said, I don't write an email like I coach.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But the way I coach sets a standard to the way that I want people to be receive my coaching, and the people that I'm going to be around. Like if I walk into a room, I'm going to have an expectation that shit's going to get done at a level of not just me feeling confident that it's getting you to where you need to be, but it's going to be at such a high level of focus and a high level of intention that you're going to have the confidence that what we're doing right now is getting me closer to where I want to go. You talk about the law of like marginal gains and like little improvements, right? When I say that you're a 1%er, I mean, if you broke up like a triangle and you start looking at like what is triangle, right? The word triangle is like delta. The delta of that like is like, what does it mean? The Greek word of like difference in, right? It's it's what separates you, and all that is like one small little habit every single day over time, stacked on, as long as it's going in the right projection. The gap, right? The high performance gap is the fact that they did the same thing in the right decision in the right direction every single day. And what happens is people like, it's the same thing with like food. I could eat really well, but if I don't take supplements, right, then there's a chance where there's a,
could be a gap between you and them. Yeah.
So it's like, okay, why would I want to leave a gap in my performance? Why? Right? And this is where, you start looking at an athlete as a complete system. You go, like, there's mind, there's body, there's spirit. But what does that mean? So how do you break that down? Well, like, everybody comes to me for training. They want their body to be a certain way. Well, it's going to take me some time to have physiological changes in the human body, right? The anatomy is only going to respond as best as we could give it, depending on where you are, right? But it's simple. You train, you fuel, and you recover. It's not that hard, right? Now, we could all argue all day long about better ways to do training in a way that we feel fit, right? And everyone's going to be different. Yeah. But then we look at it and go, hey, how do I change a body as quickly as possible? Because they came to me to change that. So I got to change it in their mind, right? So I look at the mind as like the mic, like what's my microphone of life, right? The MIC. So M is mastery. Anything that you do, right? You have to be a master at it. You have to have a level of deep understanding. I don't do superficial well. So when we have conversations, I'm okay bullshitting. I'm okay like talking, but I don't do small talk for fuck's sake. If I'm going to do small talk, it's to kind of lead me in to know if like I'm going to, at the energy level, like at the energetics level, am I going to jive with you? Right? Do we share similar values that it's worth me going deep? And then once we go deep quick, right? To really understand who the human is. So at a mastery level, when we train, it's the finer skills, because that's the beginning of how we build ourselves at the mental level. I stands for image, and it's self-image. How do I view myself in the mirror? And then the C is for confidence. Confidence is how other people view me. And what happens is everything works back, right? Like in all the stuff that we do, if you look at this model, it goes backwards. So if someone says something to me, you call me a certain name, you say, hey, you're fat, Cav. Like, yeah, the truth is I'm fat, right? I got a really good bet. One of my athletes that's done very well bet me a substantial amount, more than I've ever probably bet, that I would be in a different physical state by my birthday. So I don't have enough money to actually lose that bet. So you'll probably see a different version of me. So my wife will appreciate it.
I like that.
So it will happen. Sometimes you have to have so much skin in the game to change.
Yeah, well,
and that's my personality.
Yeah, like I had a buddy that always like he only bet big at the casino and all those kind of things. He goes, I only make bets I can't afford to lose. That's only the way I know I follow through. I
wouldn't do it at the casino.
No, I know, but he just like he goes, that's how I know I'm in it. Yeah, which is cool.
And like me coaching too, jumping into that, like I only like working with people that have skin in the game. So I don't listen to people that are the smartest people in the world that's never done it when shit's on the line.
Yeah, or started a business or had like a player rely on them for like, because like that's a lot of responsibility.
I mean, when you come to me and you say, hey, listen, I trust in you to help me with my body. I was with Dylan today with an athlete, that that's in the league. He was a hell of a player. And he just like stumbled into Dr. Dylan's office. And I'm like, do you fucking know how lucky you are? Out of all the damn people in the world, you stumbled into this guy's office? You could have went into any other Yahoo, chiropractor, whatever. You got lucky and you stumbled in his office.
Yeah.
But you don't really, like, you got to trust into that process. Like, hey, I take this serious. So, like, Dylan knows, like, I'll chew, like, we're friends, but, like, dude, like, we're professionals. I will chew his ass out because he works with a lot of my Olympians. He works with a lot of my pros. And if we don't get the progress and the growth that we want, I'm going to chew his ass out.
Yeah.
And the expectation goes both ways, right? Like if I'm not doing something that's hindering his work, he's going to have that expectation too. But the difference is when a client or an athlete's coming to me, it's my ass on the line. That kid came into his office. I'm like, dude, like you don't know how lucky you are. And if you give yourself to a person, you expect to have a great result. You're going to have a great result. I think there's a lot of like trust in that. There's a lot of like, hey, I'm believing you. I'm trusting you to take over my body. Like it's your business. Your body is your business. If you don't take care of it, it's just like an investment portfolio. You got to take care of it. You got to nurture it. You got to make sure you have the right people in your corner. So it always works backwards. So going back to the model of like the mind. So you have mastery, image, confidence. If you say shit about me, right? It's the way the world views me. And if I don't have a good like self-image, if I don't have deep comfort in who I am, realistically too, not being delusional, right? Having good self-awareness is the number one factor. Then what happens is that I'm going to be my confidence is going to be rocked. But if I have a good self-image and I know who I am, and you say something, I'm going to be fine.
Yeah.
But if you say, hey, your footwork sucks, or you suck at that drill, and I go backwards and I look at myself and I'm not being realistic with myself. I'm like, I'm fine, but I'm getting burnt. There's a problem.
Yeah.
So then I go back to the mastery level. Like, no, I've mastered that position. I've mastered that skill work. I know I'm not getting burnt. So whatever you say, that's fine. But I know I'm doing my job. So that's the fastest way I could change a person's body, by giving them and building kind of their mic system. So that's mind and that's body. And then it's like spirit, right? So spirit's simple. It's where it's passion. You come to me and you have to be passionate about something. I'm probably the worst coach in the world when it comes to somebody who doesn't know what they want.
Yeah.
I am not going to try to extract your goals, because if you told me you want to play the piano, I will be the best coach in the world. Not because I know the piano, but I will work my ass off to put you in the best position possible to learn whatever skills you need to be the absolute best on a stage one day. From I suck at, dressing up and looking a certain way. I'm going to hire you the best person. I'm going to get you a hairstylist. We'll even have somebody wax your brows, because I'm sure you're that type of guy.
Yeah.
Right? That's not me. He's a good looking dude. I don't say whatever. I don't have no problem. His face is fucked up, but look at those damn abs. He still looks like he could play. So, but I'm going to do everything in my power as a coach to give you the advantage. That's what I'm going to do. So it doesn't matter what that end skill is, right? So, but you got to be passionate about it. If you don't know what you want, I can't help you. And then the second part of it is purpose. I have to have a deep-rooted drive, right? Because if you don't, right, if you don't have a purpose, motivation's only going to last so long.
Yeah.
Right? You got to do it on a regular basis. And the last P for spirit is principles, because there's shortcuts to this game, right?
Massively. Yeah.
But the problem is, and the thing is, guess what? Shortcuts will get you to the top quick. Like, people say, like, oh, well, people who cut corners don't ever make it. Like, bullshit. I know a whole lot of people that made it, but they don't stay there.
Yeah, you show me a cheater, I'll show you a winner.
And like, hey, you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. But the reality of it is like, guys, like, we're rarely playing a fair game. Rarely at the highest level of sport. And I know a lot of people want to talk that, like, hey, it's a fair game, you against him. Like, there's so much that people don't know about from Monday to Saturday, that when Sunday shows up, is it a fair game? No, it's not a fair game. But guess what? The lights are still on. Yeah, you still got to go.
Field's still there.
Yeah. I mean,
whistle still blows.
At the end of the day, like, what are you going to be like? Oh, you're going to bitch about it?
Yeah.
So, yeah, like, even when we run the 100, right? Sometimes there's people in life that get to put their blocks in front of the line, or we're backed up a few feet. And people might not like that and be like, hey, that's not fair, but that's just the way it is. So now, I might not be the best coach in all of these areas, but for an athlete, I could promise you that when you show up, you're going to feel like you did everything right. So when you lay it on the line, you're going to find your limit as a man. And I think that's super important.
That's powerful.
It has to be.
And I mean, that's confidence in and of itself. Like, if you can truly trust the process, obviously you're developing trust by, one, how you show up, but two, with the amount of intention that goes into, like, believing in them because they believe in themselves. Because I think some coaches, I don't want to say they get it wrong, but, like, they're just coaching. They're coaching the program.
But who are they coaching for?
Yeah.
Because if you're an athlete-centric coach, I actually believe people will say that coaching is very, like, oh, it's selfless, like, you're for the person. Like, no, I got a lot of pride in what I do. It's the most selfish thing that I have. Is like, I feel more empowered and more motivated to see someone really achieve their goal. But in order for me to feel that way, I have to be all about you. I've been to quite a few championships. I've been to quite a few Olympics. I've never stood on a podium, but we came back with a lot of medals. And I've never seen once a coach on a podium too. Mm.
Yeah, but like the cool thing about that from a player's perspective is you can feel that. Like, you can feel when the coach is all in. You can feel when the coach cares. Because I think that's a separator in position coaches too. When the coach actually really cares and, like, is treating everybody that, like, not the same, but that he shows them the same amount of effort and attention. Like, I think that's a great coach. And, like, he's not going to waste his time and try and save everybody because, like, he wants those same motivated players to show up. But, like, I think the disparity I see it more at the position coach than I see it actually like the strength coach, because I think.
And at the position coach level, what you're speaking of, which I think you're 100% spot on about, is that a coach is not necessarily treating you the same, but he's treating you fair. And that kind of that gauge that he's using is based upon the way you show up too.
Yeah.
Right. So, that vet's going to get a little bit more of like understanding if he's not going all out in a practice drill. Like if you're not running a team rep and they're not freaking chasing somebody down, going across the field like 30 yards, he don't really need to do that. And everyone's like, how dare you say that? That's the reality at the level that you're in, because you got to protect your body as a pro.
Yeah.
But guess what? He's put 7 years in. He's earned it.
Yeah.
And I know, on Sunday, that I'm not worried about that guy. On Saturday at the college level, the thing is the college window is so short that you have to do every rep right.
Yeah.
But at the pro level, we are trying to expand some of these guys' careers. So you build a trust level with your position coach, and then you have to understand how you manage your own body. But you don't get that luxury at certain places. And unless you are one of those dudes, right, you're fighting for everything.
Yeah, you don't get the leash,
No, but I mean, look, I've never been an athlete with a leash. That was like, I just wasn't good to a level that I couldn't like just take a few reps off and still be like in it. I had to be like always on, because there was guys that were way more talented, and I would always have to like make sure that I was doing everything right. And we have to figure those things out. But I think oftentimes high level coaches, they know that if I could trust you, if you're going to turn it on. But if you just become lazy and that becomes like part of your identity, then you become less trustworthy.
Yeah.
But if you're intentional about your body and you're intentional about what's going to happen, then you will not let, as a football player, you will not let your, I guess, curating your own like practice structure or weekly structure affect the actual dynamic of the team. Because the speed of the way you move, and specifically at linebacker play, affects other people. Like if you're scraping, you're coming across, you're hitting a hole, whatever it may be.
It affects
timing is a big deal.
Yeah.
Timing is a big deal. People, this is the biggest change, which is like in college, they move people in and they move people down, and it's because you could bring vision from a wider role and you could bring it down because it funnels. But when you take a guy and you move him back, the field opens up and then the timing gets a mess.
Yeah.
So these are some of the things, like at the high school level, you could take guys and you could move them down. At the pro level, you move them down. So, it's rare to see someone move back or out. It's rare to see a safety go to a corner. It's rare to see, a linebacker go to a safety. Like it rarely happens, right?
Yeah, when I played safety in college, moved to linebacker afterwards. Yeah, same concept. Yeah.
Interesting, yeah. So
it's
just part of the
I completely
timing
agree.
and the rhythm and just simple things that happen. But that's built up over probably, God, how many reps have you played at safety to when you transition to backer? It's just this faster speed, because it helps you, even if you don't have that first 3 steps that another linebacker has, is that your vision's quicker.
Yeah.
Because instead of you having to see a whole field, right, 53.5, you're coming across, you're able to see basically, a couple gaps and work down the line, and you have an angle on them.
Yeah.
So much faster.
Yeah, it's cool. And then, but it takes, you're retraining the eye, you're doing all those things but like, I still think it helped me in coverage, and like, obviously there's crossover and all that kind of stuff. But to transition, obviously, one of the main reasons I would definitely want to talk to you is speed. Because, you're the guy for that. we train the fastest humans. Yeah.
Like to.
But, so as far, because like I've been through the combine protocols, and whether they're right or they're wrong, I've done different ones where I got really good results and another one where I got poor results. And then obviously like the Olympic level is a whole nother conversation, that kind of thing. But entry level to speed, like I don't even know where to start the question, but like how do you approach speed, or like we'll go pro football. An NFL guy walks into your shop, second year player wants to get faster. Like what's the...
Yeah, so let's take the conversation to focus on speed, because if you tell me, hey, they want to get faster, I'm going to be like, well, does he really need to, right? Why is he slow on the field? Why is he not reacting well? Because like you break down like sub-qualities of speed. The first one is like reacting to a stimulus. So at the football level, it's coming from first visual, right? Rarely is it auditorial. Yeah. Maybe it's auditorial first, right? As far as response, and then it's kinesthetic. Well, in a kinesthetic component, it is based upon feel, but in feel, in speed, right? Or reacting to a stimulus based upon feel is after you've already hit. So it's after you made contact with somebody, then you have to adjust. But then there's basically an energy feel too, right? Where you feel people, you see people, but you remember when you play, like, dude, I don't even remember seeing him, but I felt something and I did this.
Yeah,
happens
for sure.
all the time.
Yeah.
And if you're an athlete in a flow state, if you're an athlete in a peak state and you're super dialed in, it's almost like this sense of calm on you. Mm-hmm. And you just kind of feel it, right? And you go in there and you have no idea what happened. And then you watch the film and you're in the perfect spot, right? Well, that's your kinesthetic awareness without actually having to be touched, because there's bioenergetics, right? There's a feel. This is what your EQ of the game is.
Yeah, I've talked to some wrestlers that describe that their best matches are when they don't even remember what happened.
Yeah, and that's like when you get into like true flow state where like time basically just moves like this. And it's like that with like performance too. High productive people, when they start zoning in on anything, what ends up happening is like time goes, right? Yeah. It's like when you get fun, we're like, oh, how were we talking for so long? But wrestlers, like I wrestled all through high school and still enjoy it today. We learned to wrestle like pitch black, because you wrestle off a feel. We turn the light. We wrestle in the cafeteria, and sometimes because that's what we had, and it sucked. But we turn the lights off because they want you to work on feel, so you could have great body awareness. This is why wrestlers make really, really good, like guards in high school, even if they're like 160 pounds, because they have just great awareness of hips, and even if it's like they're wrestlers that are offensive linemen in high school are probably the best transition at the NFL level. Like if you skip level from high school to the NFL and you watch their development, if they're a wrestler, they do really well, because in the NFL, all you need to do is have your ass in the right area.
Yeah.
Right. You just need to basically make sure you could shift your hips and position yourself well and never lose leverage, because rarely are you getting manhandled. Yeah. Because the guy in front of you is a dude too. Right.
Yeah, no doubt.
So it's about like just this level of like understanding your hips and positioning you in a really good place. Right. But at the college level, there's a huge gap, right? Like that SEC lineman is going to eat your lunch if you're not a dude. Like he's going to rip you a new one. So, but at the NFL level, everyone's a dude. Yeah. At the high school level, a good wrestler could just position his body in the right spot, and that guy who probably maybe have a Division I scholarship, he's just not fine-tuned enough or mature enough to get around that guy yet. But when you get up to the NFL level, all you have to do is make sure I have two ass cheeks facing each other. That running back's going to hit that, and he's going to be good.
Yeah.
So wrestlers have great awareness of their body, because they're like, from a sensory standpoint, they don't really need their eyes. Like they could feel where they are. Like oftentimes you'll have like wrestlers that wrestle like blind athletes, a blind wrestler, and you're required to like always be touching them. You can't let go of them, right? So visual stimulus is very little. But when it comes to speed, the subqualities of it is reacting to a stimulus. So what is the stimulus, right? Sight, sound, right? Whatever it may be. Then the next one is like that first step, right? So it's basically, your rhythm and coordination. Like, you see guys that make that first step and it looks fluid, it looks smooth, or they make that first step and then a lot of moving parts happen, right? Yeah. They step and then their head moves. So I would find out exactly like breaking down their game of why they think they need to get faster. But I've never had somebody that runs fast that's hurt. So that's the first thing I'm going to address.
Interesting.
If you're hurt, you're fucked.
Yeah.
So, I don't care who you are, but you can't let go from a confidence standpoint if anything's, bothering you.
Yeah.
So for me, speed comes down to, there's a technical strategy that I feel we have absolutely mastered. We understand it. Do I think every single combine program in the country sucks? Yeah, I think they're horrible. I won't even there might be someone who's a friend of mine that I think does a good job, but generally speaking, from a technical component, most people don't even understand speed. They don't even understand what's happening.
What do you think some of the big misunderstandings?
So, the first thing I think is posture, right? So if I was breaking down an athlete, I have a really simple called H3F. So head, hips, hands, and then feet, right? So I'm going to break down those kind of KPIs of speed. And I want to make sure that in each area of speed, so there's 5 phases of speed for me, right? So it's the stance, the first step, the start, the transition, and then max velocity, right? Or what I would consider the finish. And the reason why is because you may not reach max velocity in every position, but you are going to reach a finish, right?
Yeah.
There's an endpoint. Whereas if you look at pure speed in the sense of breaking it down at the track and field level, there is the block start, right? There's the block action. There is the first step. There's the acceleration phase, right? Then there's max velocity. Then there's what's called speed endurance. And technically, speed endurance is actually just deceleration. Because once you reach once you reach max velocity, which is at the point of when you stop accelerating, right, you're immediately decelerating. I mean, it's just like gravity. A ball goes up, it stops, it comes back down.
Yeah.
Right? That's peak. So that's the same thing with peak velocity. So in track and field, you could probably reach that. So I break it down differently because when I look at team sports, I break it down in phases. So I have your stance, I have your first step, I have your start, and then I have your transition. Because as you never want to stay down the whole time, you never want to pop up. So these are all things that you could do based upon the parameters of that play. So if you look at like a football player or a baseball player, for instance, you're coming out of a box, right? Well, you're not in the most technically sound position to sprint after post swing hitting a ball.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So, you follow through, that back leg is completely internally rotated. Your front leg is trying to block as much power off. So the transfer goes from the back reel, big toe from the rear foot through the hips to the hands, right?
Yep.
The front leg is trying to be blocked off so that it transfers from the hips to the hands, and then it will eventually open up. So you have external rotation on the front leg, you have internal rotation on your back leg. And then you have to run to first base, right? Let's pretend we're all righties, so it's really easy. We're not going to make it hard to actually turn, right, from a technical standpoint.
Yeah.
But now I have an internal leg, my back leg is internally rotated. Well, in order to get my knee to go, I have to get it to externally rotate.
Yeah.
Because you can't go where you already are.
Yeah.
If my shoulder, if I have too much tension internally rotated in my shoulder and I'm a thrower, well, I have to get externally rotated to get internally rotated.
Yeah.
Right. But if I'm already internally rotated, it's going to limit my range. So my back foot's already internally rotated. So in order for me to take off, I have to reposition. That takes time.
Yep.
So that's the start. So there's a strategy. There's a tactical way in which we're going to address every single step of the actual start, first step, and then that beginning phase. And then it's head down to that first base. You're probably not reaching max velocity getting to first base, right? People could accelerate into 60 meters, 70 meters.
Yeah.
And then it's just speed maintenance at that point. But that's not happening for a baseball player. Not to mention the surface is different. The spikes are different. The contact's moving, right? Like hard surface is very, very good for speed, right? Are you faster on, a track than you are on sand? Of course.
Yeah.
Because sand's dissipating force and it's changing your hip angle, right? So I want to break down if it's a team sport athlete or a non-track athlete. Track for me is easy, right? And I do happen to, train the fastest people in the world, right? And I was super proud of, Jason Rogers' run in the Olympic run last year, Nick Mayhew in Paralympics. Talk about identity, that's a big one. But you look at Johan, who, second fastest man of all time, only guy to ever beat Usain Bolt on a race, on a track, owns Jamaica's fastest time in world history. And this year at World Championships, right, coming off an injury, coming off of a actual surgery, because I think his something burst or something like that, and something just natural. I forget what it was. Appendix burst. So he almost, those things that happens, you almost die, right?
Yeah.
So he comes off this huge season, trains, whatever, completely. Everyone's like counting him out for everything, and goes out to nationals after a tough year after the surgery and everything else, and runs a 9.85, fastest time he's run in 10 years.
That's awesome.
Flying, right? So a guy like that, number one, absolute freak, amazing human being. Talk about a person, the deeper you go, the better he is. A lot of these people are superficial, and the deeper you go, it gets ugly. He's incredible, right? But that's easy because we literally could break down the area is very similar to a pool, right? Where track and field's 100 meters. The game's the same every time.
Yeah.
Right? The temperature, the control, there might be some adjustments that's different than in a pool, right? Pool is the easiest metric. So any swimming sport, those are the easiest sports to train because it's completely what I would consider science-based. It's completely...
It's a controlled environment.
It's so controlled. The only difference that happened in kind of swimming is going to be probably one of two things, right? And they're all multifactorial, but one is... how well prepared are you going into it? And a lot of it is like logistics. Like, are you from a country that has, a more favorable approach when you're at that event, meaning that you're going to get put up at a really nice apartment? Like, I was just in Eugene at World Championships at an amazing track at the University of Oregon. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, incredible. It's a cathedral. Yeah.
It's literally unbelievable, but you're in Eugene, so it's not that easiest to get into. So some guys are flying into Portland and they're driving up, or they're going to Seattle and they're coming down. But our team and some of our guys are in freaking a prison cell, basically, you know, and they're sitting in a crate for 3 days, barely able to get in, and all the Americans are in a beautiful hotel getting ready to chill, and they have everybody else set up.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody wants to, on their own home turf, give another person an advantage. So at the pool, that's the only probably big advantage or disadvantage that you have, is if you're from an environment that you could make sure, like, before you get there, you have an adequate amount of time to practice in that environment.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, I remember getting ready in Tokyo, we weren't on a track for a week and a half. It was crazy because we couldn't get access to one because we're from a small country. I remember, we didn't have sponsorships for our spikes, and the kid basically broke his spike plate, which you have to get them all like official and authorized and everything else. You have to get spike checked. So he broke the split plate in his spike, and I remember, the company was like, "That's never happened before. It's impossible." I said, "He will," and I told him the day that they gave us those spikes, I say, "He's the most powerful person out of the blocks. This is Jason Rogers. He's never lost a block start in his life." I said, "He's going to break that spike plate," and you're like, "No way." Sure enough. First fucking thing right out of the block, snaps the spike plate right in half. So here we are 3 days out for his Olympic run in the first heat. We don't have spikes. Thank God for Nike. Not even our sponsored program. He basically supported us. They said, "Listen, we're never going to let an athlete be like that. I know he's not our sponsored guy. We're going to take care of him." They treated us like gold. So you can say whatever you want about all these other companies. Some people come through. They absolutely were awesome. He goes out there, runs, ends up, start of the year, 117th in the country, ends up finishing 6th. Unbelievable. Hell of a freaking, season from a kid from one of the smallest countries in the world, which is, less than 40,000 people, and he's 3-time Olympian.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's awesome.
So that's speed in a nutshell when it comes to like super high level, and it's a very controlled environment. Pool, obviously super controlled, but you don't have to manage so many different environments. But baseball, surface is different. Football, not only surface is different, where you play, right?
Yeah.
Where you practice, right? And then you have environmental condition as well. But every single play is different. Right?
Yeah, no
so
doubt.
I would run programs based upon their movement in their sport. So specific. Understanding how your body needs to move, and then work backwards and say, okay, where are your limiting factors? First thing everybody should do if they want to address speed, number one, make sure everyone's out of pain. There's no injuries. Everyone feels good. Number two, right? Like literally after you figure out that everyone's out of pain, the only thing you should be doing is trying to work on like your biggest weakness. Find where you suck and work on that.
Yeah.
Like that's not that hard. But the problem is like, oh, I'm really good at putting my head down and accelerating. So let's do that. In the complete opposite in track and field, you should only work on your strengths in track and field.
Yeah.
You should rarely work on your weaknesses, because you're never going to be a 400-meter runner if you're a 100-meter guy. But if you're a 400-meter runner, you potentially could come down. You can see where Fred Curley did that this year and ends up freaking winning gold in Worlds.
Kind of like the football moving down concept too.
Very, very similar.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's interesting. No, I mean, like that. I haven't thought about it like that as far, like, because like I believe like people shouldn't go into the weight room and train what they're great at either. Like there's a certain dose that is necessary to maintain X amount of ability, but really like you go to the weight room or a coach to train weaknesses. You go to a doctor to fix a problem. Like it's the same mindset.
But you're gonna probably do your strengths on your own anyways.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna skip arm day either. It's just like a thing.
I've skipped a few.
Yeah.
You can't tell.
Yeah, but
it's
like
leg days, I don't skip.
But
I'm bottom heavy.
But it's a mindset that gets lost too, because like also like as a coach that trains a lot of athletes, or a coach that's training an entire football team, like not everything's specific to everybody's strengths and weaknesses. There's these general programmings to some extent. Like
I think that's a problem though.
Yeah,
I think that's a cop out to a coach that. Look, I've done complete individualized programs for Division III programs with hundreds and something of kids. Never had a problem. And yet a coach making $500,000 at a big time program with God knows how many resources coming out of his ass can't do one individualized program for their best player. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree. But
and that's a problem.
But it happens.
It's not what happens. That's the standard.
Yeah.
It's not even what happens. It's the way they all do it.
Yeah, and it's some of the program is even built to like just not get guys hurt. It's like not checking boxes to an extent, but it's like, yeah, we're working out, we're training the legs, we're training whatever. You can again, add the FMS and all those kind of things too. But it's not.
I don't know why you would do that, but that's your choice.
Yeah, but it's not targeting each player and their weaknesses. Like you're targeting a team, and Luke Richardson did a good job of at least identifying everybody's inadequacies or asymmetries, and then even determined that our team was unfit to run at one point. So we redialed in everything.
And that's all. Well, so there's two things. That's someone who actually is a professional. That's someone who cares about. I don't know him, but listening to you as an athlete talk about somebody gives me enough information to know if that guy cares about his job and cares about his players.
Yeah, and he's a guy that commanded a room and got everybody on the same page. And we became incredibly efficient in the weight room. Like that speaks enough for itself for me, because I've seen an efficient weight room as well.
And not only inefficient but dangerous. And that's what's scary, because so you look at like the 4 physical qualities, right? Strength, speed, flexibility, endurance. The easiest one to obtain, right, to change an actual physical body is strength.
That's a great point. Yeah.
I mean, think about this. Like, what talent do you have to be strong?
Yeah.
What talent do you have to have? How many people do you know?
Balance, I don't know. Yeah.
No.
You know.
There's only one thing that you need to have to be strong.
Yeah.
Discipline.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to go in every single day and just do it.
Yeah, and move the needle and climb the pyramid, whatever.
There's farm boy strength, right? Like I grew up on the water in Miami. I did a lot of manual labor growing up. I don't want to do a lot of manual labor now. So if my parents are hearing this and they're bitching about me saying he don't do shit, like, well, yeah, now I've earned the right to not.
Yeah.
But back then I was completely abused.
Part of your purpose, yeah.
Yeah, I was completely abused, and I worked my ass off, and I got just kind of naturally strong. Never touched a weight in my life.
It's compound interest on a life of work.
I mean, I can remember since before I was 10 years old, I was lugging basically gravel, sand, and bags to do landscaping work with my dad, and there's probably 300 to 400 bags a day.
Yeah.
Each bag's between 40 and 60 pounds, you know? And as a kid, what do you want to do? I want to pick up the big one. I want to pick up the big one.
Yeah.
You know? And you don't realize, like, how much stronger you actually get, you know? If they're laying bricks somewhere and I'm grabbing bricks constantly, like when I started wrestling, I was like, oh my God, like my hand scripts was incredible, you know?
Yeah, which is a
and
great
you don't
quality.
even realize that that's where it came from.
Yeah.
So it does happen, and I talk about brick by brick, but that's how it happens. But for me, you talk about like an efficient weight room, you talk about a safe weight room, right? I would bring back the conversation of like, well, are we doing what we should be doing? Is the test telling us what we need to know? So you talk about FMS, right? And I'll bring this up just for people that know it. Functional movement screen. I've got nothing against that whatsoever. I think they have a purpose of it. It actually started at Averett University, a Division III school in Danville, Virginia. Shout out to Danville, right on the border of Virginia.
And shout out to Virginia for the boys.
That's right. Let's go.
We got Dill in the house too.
Let's go. But hey, talk about the boys, the E brothers, Edmund's brother, Trey, Tremaine, and Trammell. They're in Danville. Probably the best thing that ever came out of there, which is pretty awesome. But FMS came out of Danville, Virginia, which was at Averett University, and they were doing the program out of there, which was pretty awesome at the time in regarding taking a very like intentional approach to evaluating an athlete's health and where they need to be. But did it actually help, right? Do I get to 90 degrees at a hamstring test? Does that actually help, right? I want an athlete to be able to get their leg as far as back like the figure skater, except I want the tension to be as close to the stretch shortening cycle as possible. So where it's so specific to the skills that they need. So for instance, a defensive back, right? I need them to be able to, they're going to be in a shortened position because they're constantly moving backwards. When they put that foot in the ground, I need them to have the tension in that hamstring, right? And probably in the area of like the quad hamstring tension so that the knee's in a certain position. It's got, a really good gap in the knee joint to where when they backpedal and they put their foot in the ground, they could spring right back out of there. I don't want their tension to be anywhere other than is specific to their sport. And that's just on one single test. But that's completely different for any other positions.
Yeah.
That's just for a DB. You talk about offensive lineman, right? If I do, you want to do a lot of like thoracic rotation or thoracic, you want to have good mobilization of the thoracic spine. And FMS, that's a score that you want to have high. But I don't want an offensive lineman to have one that's high. Because if I could get that guy into extension and those facet joints get jacked up,
that's a loss.
He's going to get put on his back. There's a reason why being called a silverback in the NFL is not a bad name. There ain't nothing derogatory. Like, call me that, call my friends that. Like, all my guys that say that's a derogatory term, I promise you they're going to eat that up. They love that.
Yeah.
Because when you see someone's back, right, and like right where like the thoracic lumbar junction is, if you see basically a slab of meat on that, you ain't pushing that boy
little
back.
back strap.
His back is not breaking.
Yeah.
But if you see someone with, let me do some mobility drills, you do that and see what happens to them when 280, 310 comes out off the edge and puts their frickin', their hands on you. Your back's gonna snap, and you're like, but I got a 3 on my FMS.
Yeah, that's funny because I got some O lineman buddies that do a lot of mobility now as opposed to strength training. Yeah, that's a
mobility on offensive linemen. That you need to protect your hips, you need to protect your ankles. You need your shoulders to be literally like with great range. You need to have the adequate range and stability to that position, because what happens is you're going to get hurt at end range load.
Yeah.
But so if you do all the mobility work, but you don't have strength in that end range load, now all of a sudden you have the capacity to get there, but you're weak there.
Yeah.
So it's going to be easier for you to get there, which is why guys that have like big boys that have like super stiff shoulders, their shoulders rarely get hurt. They get hurt more in the weight room than they do on the field. So they're like, I can't press, my shoulders are jacked up, but you're never hurt on the football field because your shoulders are jacked up because the tension over time getting hit there is actually supporting their function. You're only hurt because you started doing dumb shit in the weight room that everyone thought was important for mobility.
Yeah.
Let's smash that with a lacrosse ball. Well, yeah, you're an idiot.
Yeah, I know it's a multivariable system, but so while we're on the weight room, like what are good things in the weight room to do to help improve speed? I know it's a kind of a loaded question.
Of course, right? So going back to like the one thing I said about like the stretch shortening cycle. So at foot contact, right, we're looking at basically, specific angles. So as you go coming from your start or acceleration, right, you're coming from more of a folded angle. So you need to be doing things at full range of motion. You want the hip to come all the way down. So squats are great, right? Single leg work is awesome. But everything's working together. So the tension's critical. One of the biggest things when it comes to like a squat, I say a squat is awesome, right? And I think maximum loading is good, but it's dangerous. So you got to be cautious. I believe in loading a guy as much as possible until technical breakdown. But at any point that there's a technical breakdown, the risk for injury is going to shoot through the roof.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of understand like what's the cost of doing business, right? The cost of doing business as football players, as fighters, right, is our bodies are beat up after we're done. The cost of doing business in the weight room it shouldn't be that way. It should be to prolong our career and keep us safe. So if we don't have the same technical proficiency that we do in the field in a squat, then we shouldn't be doing it, or we should do it until that load causes us a breakdown.
Yeah.
So, but I would prefer our hip to be up underneath us, because in sprinting or when you move, you want your hips up underneath you.
Yeah.
Right. You don't want your hip pulled back. Right. You don't want to have like a big lordosis or like a duck. Right. Where your butt's back like that, which is what's taught in a lot of weight rooms. That's causing a lot of tension issues in the wrong area, and it's making you slower. So those are something that I'll do. I actually squat guys with a lot of load on the front of their foot, because where do you want to run?
Yeah, front of your foot.
Yeah, exactly. So you want your load. I would say, hey, do you put all your weight on the front of your foot? Yeah, I'd vary it a lot, but let's say 60-40. So in front of your shoelaces, 60-70% of your load should be on it when you're lifting, and then on your heels differently. Outside of a deadlift, because of position. But Dylan was showing some stuff, with some of the guys that have like some back issues or inabilities to kind of internally rotate, which is critical. So in acceleration, internal rotation in the hip is one of the most critical factors. So I would make sure that you have great internal rotation for acceleration. So you have a guy that's like stuck in a hole, right? They can't they don't have that first pop. They're doing a back pedal and then they can't get out of there, or that first 5 yards is just shit. I guarantee you, check their internal rotation of their hip. If it's limiting, you'll never get faster if you just lift. Get the range first, then load it.
Yeah, Don't build strength on dysfunction.
Exactly.
Yeah,
perfect. So Dylan was showing basically instead of we do a lot of heel elevated stuff because we want that load to go forward. But if we're doing deadlift work, can we get the foot to do the opposite, right? We arch it on the front of it, get the angle up, and push everything back so it internally rotates that hip, strengthens it, takes a little bit of stress off the lower back. So I think that's critical. So in the weight room, I'm looking at basically strength in the range of motion that's needed. So if it's acceleration, we're going to be deeper. At top end, it's going to be higher. So I'm all about quarter squats. I'm all about the stuff that people are like, that's stupid. But like, hey, bodybuilders, right? They go ass to grass. They could do full splits. Like I'm talking about elite level bodybuilders, not like your jack guy that you would fail a drug test if you just walk by him, in the locker room. I'm talking about the guy who's like a professional bodybuilder. Yeah. He could do a full split, right? So don't tell me flexibility is not important.
Yeah.
Don't tell me that bodybuilders, but he's not strong. He just looks pretty. Have you try lifting with them?
Yeah. It's a war.
It's crazy, right? So they're strong as shit. But yet, if they really want to get they want to hit that that VMO, they want to get that quad definition, they're doing quarter squats. They're not doing a lot of deep work, right? They're just getting that VMO. Well, isn't that kind of important for like top end speed? Yeah. Kind of important.
Yeah,
right?
massive.
Hamstring, kind of important.
Yeah.
So what I would do is really, again, identify the weakness right away, and then correlate all of the exercises that are the least risky and the biggest benefit to where you need them and work on those. So this is advice for someone who's both a pro athlete and a college athlete or a high school athlete going into a college weight room. There's a time to basically bring your ego to the weight room. And then there's a time to where you could kind of bang on the walls, be rah, and lift 140 pounds and nobody knows it. Because it looks like you're a weight room guy, but you're protecting yourself because your body doesn't handle that, right?
Yeah.
So for instance, I probably never cleaned. I think I cleaned like 270 one time. I remember I got hurt when I pulled like 340, and I never done that ever again. So I stayed at like that. Oh, I'm going to sit in this group. Now, if we were squatting, I was trying to put some weight on the bar because that was where I was strong. Yeah. And I never was going to get hurt in that environment. I felt good. But if we were benching, I'm like, I'm going to go over to this group.
But I'm going to be loud. Yeah.
Exactly. So, but like I was allowed like non-spotter, non-lifter. And then I was focused, diligent work where I needed to be, and never had a problem with a coach ever with my work ethic. And I knew that I didn't have a body that could withstand doing dumb shit, because I constantly would get broken down, and I never got hurt anywhere but playing. Thank God.
That's a cool level of self-awareness, because like I couldn't take my ego out of it. Like and like I was I
had to, because I walked in there and I was probably one of the weakest guys. So it was like super easy for me. Like, wait a second, I'm a better ball player than you, and I'm not going to get an opportunity because you're stronger than me. Yeah. Or like I'm not getting an opportunity because you're this. I'm like, fuck that. I mean, if I have to knock you out, if I have to fight you, I mean, I'd rather just, punch your teeth in to win that job than it is like lose to you on a bench press. And that's what's going to be the issue. Where I won is in conditioning. I never cheated a rep. I always did what I needed to do. I was always in shape. And it's interesting because I'm a fat kid. Like I'm naturally a big guy. So I have to like work really, really hard. But mentally, I was able to push through these things. Like I think the only physical test I failed ever was like long distance runs. It would just break me. It just broke me. Any long distance runs.
We don't have that energy system. Yeah.
It didn't work, right? And I was dying. And I think, I work with a lot of fighters now. Like I think road work's important for the mental aspect because you're in your own head. It's not great from the physical standpoint, but it's definitely phenomenal for, you start dragging a guy in a fight to deep waters. It's pretty awesome because you're in your own head. But it's definitely not the best from a physical standpoint.
Yeah, I actually you put this quote up a long time ago, but I like it a lot. I think it's the definition of mental toughness or mental fortitude is that when you find fuel on an empty tank. For some reason, I like that a lot because in a lot of situations in sports, especially like the conditioning or like the college conditioning where they're trying to empty everybody's tank and then see who still shows up, who touches the line, all this kind of stuff. I really like that.
Yeah, so like interesting thing. So this is a great one that you kind of parlay it. You say touching the line, right? I don't think I've ever missed a line in my entire life doing conditioning. And I'll say this with a caveat saying I've missed plenty of lines, but I've always went back, touched it, and finished. I've never missed a time as an athlete, like in regarding a run. Yeah. Unless I actually cut a line short, had to go back and then do it.
That's pretty.
Because I would never. It was something that my dad instilled in me when I was younger. Like that was there were some simple principles that he basically was like, listen, don't be that guy. Yeah. We have those guys in the locker room that act a certain way. They do certain things. Like, listen, you're going to have a hard time in life if you cut that short because you ain't good enough. Yeah. And it was just like, and I knew I wasn't. So it wasn't like, oh, okay. Like, no, I ain't that guy. But I was I never got bullied in my life.
Yeah.
I think I got picked on as an 8th grader. As a bunch of seniors in high school was like, oh, cool, you want to like have a good time, whatever, do this shit. I'm like, all right, but I'm gonna grab one of you and rip you a new one. Like I'm gonna get jumped by 4 of you, but I'm gonna grab one of you and you're gonna remember. Yeah. Hey, and that stuff doesn't happen. If you set the tone, you learn to protect yourself right, over time. But you got to know who you are, right?
Yeah, and I think I love the line concept because like it's very tangible and like I probably learned it in high school at some point, but I knew the guy I didn't want to be was the guy that like got it done for the first 8 reps and then turned it on for the last 2.
Absolutely.
And like those are the guys I wanted to fight.
Yep.
Because
you're killing me. Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
And the other thing too, which is interesting, the line is super important in life because it isn't moving. It's you that's moving. And in today's society, people constantly move the goalpost on us. Right?
Yeah.
So we're being judged by our performance, but then the goalpost moves while we're playing. And this happens in sport and it happens in life. It's like, well, you said we needed to hit this in order to make this opportunity happen. You hit it, you don't get that opportunity, and they say, hey, well, we really need you to be here.
Yeah.
And in business, as you guys transition your careers, you'll learn that. That happens all the time. The goalposts keep moving. The benefit of like, it's you against that line. You're the one moving, that line's not. The only thing that's happening is time is passing, and you're watching a bunch of other people. And we talk about like cheating, not trying, people that are cutting corners. This is a great example. That guy that's cutting corners on that work because that first few are easy, and then he kind of ramps it up a little bit. And the coach is wondering why are you dogging? It looks like it is because that guy was basically fucking bagging it the whole practice.
Yeah.
Right? And then he just ramps it up, and then he's the talker. Oh, come on, guys, come on. He's the hype man.
Yeah.
Like the hype man's about to get like punch in the mouth. And it's unfortunate, but it's like that's the way it works. So I've always kind of like taken a more internal look at the conditioning level and a more teamwork at some of the other stuff. So look, you're a physically gifted athlete and you work really hard in the weight room, but I've seen a lot of guys get broken in the weight room and very seldomly get broken on the field.
Yeah.
So, your job, you have a degree and you go to college, basically it only should tell me that your degree says one thing. I know how to manage a weight room. So if you're a strength coach, you know how to manage a weight room safely. So that means no one should ever get hurt. That is literally your job. That's your job description. So figure that shit out. Now, as an athlete, you need to be a self-advocate, whereas if something's not working for you, you got to figure it out.
Yeah, and you got to articulate that's happening.
Nowadays, kids are so used to like getting in line. They want to communicate. They want to talk. They want to listen to the guy that's like super smart. They can articulate that like, oh my God, that my right shoulder's tight. Therefore, my left knee hurts and I got a pimple on my ass. Right. And then this is the reason why. That's cute, but does it get you better? And then that guy's talking about that stuff, but he's not willing to articulate why this drill is causing me pain. It hurts. What do I do?
Yeah.
Like at some point you have to give him a practical piece of information so he could do something with it. And this is like going back to speed, right? Just circling back. Every drill you do should either make you faster or why are you doing it?
Yeah, makes sense.
Lifting. Get as strong as you can to make you faster in the sport that you're doing or make you more technically sound in the activity that you're doing, and then don't do it.
Yeah.
So at any point that your strength makes you slower, makes you too tight to potentially do your role, stop doing it.
Yeah.
At any point that anything that you do degrades your skill, because just as much as you could accelerate skill acquisition by learning the sequence of things, and this is probably the hidden gem of like performance training, everyone does a lot of the same things, but their sequences are all fucked up. They don't have it in the right order. And you talk about compounding qualities, right? If you put things in the right sequence,
it just flows.
It's amazing what happens. Like, ooh, now I've done this and it opened it up. And most people, they're ass backwards. Like most people, they do things when they're not supposed to do, right?
Can I get an example?
I mean, like, why would you foam roll before you train?
Yeah.
What are we trying to do? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
People talk about like static stretching's bad. It's the best thing. Have you ever seen, so I train the fastest athletes in the world, no doubt. Anyone that wants to compete with me, well,
holler at me, yeah.
Well, it's not even about like holler at me. It's like, hey, I don't know, go look at the record books. The other thing that you could do is like, hey, challenge us at the 100 meters and go to the Olympics. What, you haven't been there? Oh, shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
I don't like want to be that guy, but at the end of the day, like my athletes are at the point where they're like, Cav, like I'm tired of this guy talking about stuff. You need to speak up. I'm like, well, you need to run faster, because I don't really have credit unless you do it, because I can't.
Yeah.
But the truth is like when it comes to sequencing of stuff, when it comes to organizing what we're trying to do, people put static stretching, if they do it at all, at the end of the workout, right? Well, for me, I need to make sure that we've created enough space in that joint, because anything a compressed joint is going to inhibit your ability to produce power, right? Because nerves run through the joints, which is kind of critical. So if you have something that's compressed, it's going to be limited. So I want to make sure that the joint is prepared to be able to do things both at the velocity that I need and the volume that I need, because those are the two areas where you get hurt. Think about it. Like in training, forget sport. In training, in practice, you're going to only get hurt in one of two areas. Velocity, right? You move too fast. You threw a ball and then your technique broke down.
Yeah.
Right? And now all of a sudden there's more strain on your elbow than there's supposed to be in your shoulder or in your whole body. Boom, there goes your UCL, Tommy John. So velocity, or same exact position, same exact sport. I'm throwing too much. There's a technical breakdown. This is worn out. This is fatigued. Volume hits. Bam, there goes my UCL, Tommy John.
Yeah.
So volume and velocity are the two areas that you're going to need to manage if you don't want to get hurt.
Yeah, makes sense.
And that's
like
normally
that.
where technical breakdowns occur if somebody's already technically sound.
Yeah.
Because load, right? Load is quite easy if you think about it, right? Because at any point there's a technical breakdown, stop.
Yeah.
Right? Choose a different weight.
That's your metric. Yeah.
It's actually quite easy. But volume's a little bit harder because people want to kind of gut it out or push through it.
Yeah,
and there's a lot more moving parts. Velocity is really hard because you only get one shot. Once you if you're in a warm up, if you warm up to 98%, you're not feeling 100%. All of a sudden, boom, you don't have full range of motion in your hamstring. There it goes, right? You warm up to 103%, right? You over index on your warm up. You over invest into it. Now you're more tired, and you run a little bit, lower in regarding your potential. So you're always trying to figure out what your sweet spot is. So how do you know where 100% is if you don't have self-awareness? Like I said, the number one quality of a successful high performer is self-awareness.
Yeah.
Now, it's not like lip service. It's literally clear in almost every metric you do. But if you don't have a clear metric for your load, then you have to have a clear metric for your technical, breakdown. Yeah, because if you don't have a technical system that you work off of, it's going to be a problem. So stretching to me is critical. I've never seen an Olympic athlete not stretch. You don't have an athlete that's faster than an athlete that I train. Nobody does. And I can say that because we win.
Because what's the logic of not static stretching before football is that it takes you out of your range of motion that you're warmed up for or whatever it is.
Is that true? Or
I don't know. I'm
because science research at the collegiate level is done on what candidates, who are the people that are the majority of ones that are doing every evidence-based research. Who is the people that are in the studies?
Yeah, not high performers probably.
Did you ever you were the dude, right?
Yeah.
Right? Were you ever in a study, in an exercise science study as a participant?
Nope, never even asked.
Do you remember the scientists that were GAs in your program?
No.
When you were in college. But do you remember what they were like?
The GAs?
Yeah, the type of people they were.
Yeah, for sure. I'd say grinders, guys that love.
Were they dudes?
Love the weight room? No.
Those are where your studies are done. I don't work with average people. I'm not trying to be an ass, but all these average studies don't do anything for me. I don't work with average people. As Dylan, he's been to Jamaica with me. He's literally been to Jamaica with me. Rub his hands on one of my bum on the street. That's an Olympian. Literally, that's what he is.
Yeah.
He's a bum in Kingston. You get him off the street. You put your hands on him. You rub your freaking thumb over his thigh. You're going, holy shit! It's like filet mignon. You do that over any other athletes or a GA at one of these colleges that are doing studies. It don't feel like that.
No, yeah.
That guy's a freak. His fibers are very different. You could say whatever you want, but that guy is built different. Not internally, but genetically, he is built different. Genetics don't matter. Hey, man,
Yeah.
I'll take my guys and we'll beat your guys.
Yeah.
And I'd rather start with genetics because it's pretty hard to say, hey, Hank Krajinoff is like one of my mentors. He jokes around. He goes, elephants aren't made to jump. You never see elephants jumping over a fence. So why am I going to take an elephant and make him do that? He is literally going to look at like genetic potential before he starts looking at like ambitions and drives. And I think athletes generally do a good job of like self-selecting their journey. They do a pretty good job because
your talents kind of steer you towards
you
like,
will, right?
I'm going to do what I'm good at, especially in the world of sports for me, at least. Like I like being good at things and like being, it's positive reinforcement. It's a lot of things, but like I like being competitive and I like fucking winning.
I mean, for me, the one sport that I will talk the most shit in, like if you ask me, like we're gonna go one-on-one, I will talk the most shit in basketball. I will literally dunk on you. You will not like. Do you play basketball at all?
Yeah, I dabble.
I will fuck you up. Do you know why I could act like that? I wrestled. So if you've ever played basketball against a wrestler, you know how bad we are.
Yeah, it's just
like we are horrible.
It's a grappling.
So
session.
I'm joking.
Yeah,
I'm like, there's like I talk to my friends that are basketball guys, and I'm like, listen. The day I play you in basketball, you will literally retire because I'll embarrass you. Because there's no chance in hell I could compete with them. And I enjoy it. But I didn't ever try to become a basketball player. Because some points you just figure that out.
Just
right?
an elephant.
And I grew up in the MJ
just
era.
An elephant trying to jump.
Yeah, I grew up in the MJ era. Like that was like amazing, right? And then Space Jam come out, and then here's me playing with the basketball till midnight, thinking that I'm one day going to become 6'6" and be the guy. Like that ain't happening.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You know what I mean? It's just not.
Yeah.
So I realized that my skills were better suited to these particular sports in these areas. Like I was a good baseball player, but my dad was a technician as a baseball guy. And it just like everything I did was wrong. So I kind of like steered away from that. And then there's levels to it, right? Where like, hey, I led the county in Miami for, home runs and I was a stud in baseball for a while. And then it's like, okay, well then how can you hit high 90s? Can you hit high 80s with movement and can you hit low 90s? Like, no. Okay. Well, there's levels to this game.
Yeah.
And as you kind of go through levels, you realize where you stand. And for me, it's like, I'm not saying, hey, I'm quitting, but when your best friend or somebody who's a dude is like doing the same work you're doing every day and they're having success and you're not, and you're having success in something else, like you're going to gravitate to the instrument, right? That you're going to find the most success at.
Yeah, that plays the right tune. Yeah. No.
I mean, in middle school, you try out for band and everybody does what? They grab the drums, right? And if you weren't...
I grabbed the trumpet, but yeah, whatever.
Well, hey, man, that's you. Kidding. So, hey, man. But like if you haven't had prior training before, you showed up, that you aren't going to make it.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, I'm not going to teach you. Like the concept in the band and the music world is I'm not going to teach you unless you've already showed up with some skill.
Yeah, great point.
Right? Well, as a coach, we get athletes all the time that like, what have they done before they showed up to me?
Yeah.
Right? So, I mean, I look at it like that, and I truly feel that as you self-select your journey and you find the right instrument for you in sport or in life, that you're going to have more success, you're going to enjoy it more, and then you're going to be really willing to push beyond your limits. Because I think every man wants to find their limit.
Yeah, no doubt.
So I'm a big believer in that. And then when you look at like speed at the highest level, right, everything has to be right. And the faster you go, right, you basically run yourself out of alignment. That's the only reason why someone slows down. That they run so freaking fast that their hands move away from their midline. So your hands are open, they're beautiful, they're smack dab right in the middle of your midline. And as you drive back, they go past your hip pocket, slightly extend, knee comes through, strikes the ground. It's beautiful. And as you get so freaking fast, your body, basically your hands move out of alignment because you get wider and your body's saying, oh shit, and it tries to slow you down. So in order to slow you down, your head protrudes forward, your hands go wider, you have a really like extended backside work, and then it wants you to lift, because if you lift, you naturally will slow. So your body is basically fighting physics when you try to run as fast as you can. So most people are going to be like, that feels awkward, coach. Yeah, because it's fast. And you're trying to hold yourself, like you're trying to stay down into that tunnel as long as you can, right? And that's the key, is like you want your hips to climb, you don't want to pop up, but you are folding and then unfolding. And then as you stay kind of down that pipe when you run, you want to stay narrow and leaning, and then you drive and you get down that line, and your body's basically trying to widen you out because your body's trying to protect you from getting hurt. Because if you run fast, if you keep doing this,
If you go faster than you can slow down, or
it's like if you keep doing this, something's going to happen. So when you start to see this in people, right, you know, like, okay, that's their limit. So how can I take that limit from 60 meters to 70, 70 to 72 meters, 70 to 77 meters, right? That's what I'm trying to get to. And it's we're constantly challenge those limits of a man. And we do that at every component, from the neurological level, from the biochemical level, from the structural level, from the bioenergetic side. Right? Like self-talk, everything as a complete system is all geared into like their mental framework and saying, hey, I'm going to be the fastest man in the world. I'm going to be the most prepared athlete. And I'm going to make sure I go in there with a level of confidence that nobody could else ever question, what I could do. And then the cool part is like when I put my hands on the line, everything else goes away. And I could just
which
be
is
me.
a skill too.
Because what it does is you're going to have two things that happen when you get on the line. There's only two things that will happen. You'll generate more anxiety or more adrenaline. Not both, because they're the exact same things that happen in the brain. At the neurotransmitter level, they're the exact same. It's what you choose to do with them. That's why we like nicotine so much.
Yeah, that's my guy. But so in that realm of separation of like those two things, like obviously that's like a choice and you can control some of that. But like at the Olympic level, like, cause I see like in the NFL, like you walk into a linebacker room and you look at the room, like there's not a massive difference between each person. Like there's 5% difference.
There was with me, but that's
yeah,
okay.
but and physical ability or like actual skill.
Sure.
But there's a disparity. Obviously, there's a guy making $15 million and there's a guy making 450, whatever. So obviously, you understand the value of the mental side of the game or whatever is a separator at that point. But it's usually between your ears.
Sure.
How does that show up in the Olympics? Like, what do you like? Obviously, like you have your system and like you're coaching all those things and you're developing and pushing edges and limitations. But just from what you've seen so far, like what has made some of these great sprinters great? Not like body essence wise, like between
they're all fast, right? So I always laugh when there's people that do like speed breakdowns on Instagram or some of these shows, and I'm like, I don't know if you realize it, but all these guys are the fastest people in the world. Like they're all the fastest.
Yeah.
There's a difference between that guy and the other guy, and there is small differences that we do need to work through, but they're all the fastest.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
You put that next to your fastest person, and he gets torched. The difference between like a champion and everybody else is literally the mindset. It's a level of like calmness, right? So we talked about kind of like the three accelerators of each one of the components of mind, body, and spirit, right? We talked about those, right? We talked about the mind, mastery, image, confidence. We talked about train, fuel, recover for the body. We talked about passion, purpose, and principles. But there's overlaying components, right? So overlaying component of mind and body is character, like what you do. Who are you at your deep rooted self, right? Your mind and your spirit is like the calm, like how calm are you when you're in that state? Like that's that peak state, flow state. We talked about that before. And then the overlap on the other one is drive, right? You need to stay motivated. You're doing this for your own self because you're going to run into resistance in your career. And I would say those three components, when you step on a line, are the difference makers to the athletes that not just win. So again, it's not that having ones that have success short term, but it's the ones that actually stay in the mix for a very long period. Like Johan is 32 years old. He is, a second greatest sprinter of all time, second fastest man in human history, highest velocity, fastest man in human history when he ran his 200. He's the highest recorded velocity. Means he's ran the fastest as any human on the face of the earth on that 200-meter bend. Yeah. Because when people don't know this, but when you lean into onto the bend and curve of a track, you could strike the ground at a shorter contact point, so you could accelerate longer.
Could you say that again?
I should.
Yeah, tell him again.
Yeah. So max velocity is at the point in which acceleration ends, or acceleration ends at max velocity. So the longer you could accelerate, the highest potential.
That turn can get you going.
So the turn, exactly, you bend off the curve. He doesn't run indoor. You know why he doesn't run indoor? He produces too much force for the curve of a track. Because he'll roll himself into another lane or he'll implode. He's too strong.
Or implode. Yeah.
He literally will, because the forces, instead of it going outside of the body, the angles aren't set up enough, so he'll actually have to slow down. But if he runs as fast as he can, he'll bounce into the next lane because he's that powerful.
That's awesome.
Jason Rogers doesn't run anything on the bend because he literally is the fastest guy on the blocks in human history. It's unbelievable. No one's ever beat him. We just had a kid, American, the track guy that plays for the Eagles, right? That he false started.
Yep.
Because a human is not supposed to.
Yeah, it was like
be able to rack
0.001
under
or whatever.
0.1.
Yeah.
Well, look at the tape. He reacted after the gun.
Yeah.
So technically for him, one of his greatest advantages is his ability to disassociate everything else in his life and be so conscious of that gun going off and react. Meaning my brain reacted to that sound, and my body did exactly what I wanted it to do. Simultaneously reacting to an action that I have no idea when it's going to happen. I mean, it's within a range, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know when it's going to happen. I can't guess it. It's video evidence proof. We could slow it down. He takes off after the gun. But the rule set says in human history, that's not allowed. You shouldn't be able to do that. Well, that's one of his greatest assets.
Yeah.
So he gets literally a red card. He's done because he's the best in the world at reaction. That doesn't seem fair.
Yeah.
Because I can promise you, he's definitely not the best. Like Parchment and who ended up having another foul too pre-start, and Galloway. Those guys are better top end, right? So like, that's not a fair trade. And here he is. Why is he like that?
Yeah.
Because he probably doesn't have the anxiety. Like he's a pressure guy.
Yeah, he's an adrenaline
I don't know
guy.
him, but he's probably a pressure guy. He's a football player, so he's so used to being in that environment, right? And then it's almost that's not his only thing in his life.
Yeah.
So a lot of that anxiety will probably just go away.
Yeah, I thought because it kind of like what we talked about, like a football player or a pro athlete getting things that feed them outside of just the sport or use football to set them up for life after. Like there's easier transition there because they have, again, something else.
There's a lot of freaking skills that you guys develop that you don't even understand how incredible, that those tools could be used for other things. So for instance, I heard this from Nick Saban. He's like, listen, I get guys that literally can't get into the school. And within 2 weeks, they understand every single word, not just by memorization, but by action in a playbook that's this thick. Are you telling me that kid's dumb?
Yeah.
That kid ain't dumb. He just doesn't have an interest in the subject that you're teaching.
Yeah.
So I think those are the differences. And like, how can you leverage that for your career? Because whatever it is, that playbook, your playbook for life, your playbook for your telos, your playbook for your second mountain, your playbook for while you're in sport, whatever that is, whatever that playbook is, you need to make sure that subject is completely based upon what your drive and what your passions are. If they're not, right, then you're playing someone else's game. Yeah. And most people are going to beat you in that realm, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. That was a nice little summary, actually, to probably wrap it up on, dude. But, dude, appreciate your time. Where can everybody find you?
Oh, man, I'm not a fan of social, but I enjoy it the most, so I'm like a shit talker on there.
Yeah, perfect.
So I love it. So Coach Cav on Instagram and most channels, KAV. And then, Athlete HQ and a few other companies, we're a part of. I do my best to try to stay out there because I think we have an obligation to share. But one of the things that's most interesting is, like, as a coach or anybody, like, you put a lot of information out there and you say, hey, where can people find you? You'd be surprised at some of the best people in the world and how accessible they are if you come at it from a genuine level. Like if someone said, hey, I heard you on Brian's, podcast, Peters is, this type of guy, he was saying something, I didn't understand it. What do you mean? If I don't get back to you, I promise you I'm not big timing you. It's because it's like cluttered. It's in a folder of a bunch of stuff. But if you're persistent, right? Like, so if you're persistent, most likely someone who is genuine at what they do, they're going to reach back out to you. So before we leave, the definition of a pro to me, PRO, the definition of a pro. P stands for passion. You got to be passionate about what you want. Whatever it is that you guys want, information, question, something in which you're trying to learn, you got to be passionate about it. R stands for resiliency, because in your pursuit of your passion, you have to be in a relentless pursuit because you're going to have obstacles. You're going to run into some not so fun times, right? As we talk about, motivation doesn't last. So you have to be passionate about it and you have to be resilient, because that pursuit is going to get ugly. And then and this is probably the most important thing, is ownership. Because if you don't take ownership in your life, why is someone else going to do it for you?
Yeah.
So if you're asking a question, you said, where can someone get in touch with you? If you really want something, you'll find me.
Yeah.
But I'm going to make it a little easier.
Yeah.
But how many times have people reached out to you?
That's a great point. Yeah.
Yeah. Like how many people reach out to you, and then like, it's not that you're trying to drop the ball, but like, I think I didn't respond to you for weeks one day, not because I don't like you. Like,
no, life happens.
But we get busy. We're all over the place. But for me, it's like, how persistent are you? How resilient are you to being told no to get your what you're trying to accomplish? And you talk about self-selecting, like pros are not going to take no for an answer, or they're going to go to someone that's finally going to say yes.
They'll solve the problem.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then life, in life, problem solvers, people that are going to adapt, are the ones that are going to, be at the top, not just the fastest, but the longest.
Yeah. True that.
Cool,
easy.
man.
Yeah.
Always
Appreciate.
fun.
Yeah. Easy.
Always,
Appreciate
man.
you.